a trans with a schmendrick swinging it in a girl's bathroom.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
All right, everybody. Welcome, dissidents, one and all. Sunday night, 7 p.m. That means it's time for the DueDissidence podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hola, mi amigos y mi amigas y otras.
All right, excellent. Excellent. Showing me up there a little bit. Under a lot of pressure tonight. I was reading the chat while our music was playing. We have some of you guys are interrupting your chores to be here with us. Holly was out shoveling snow. Holly, if I remember correctly, you're from the Midwest somewhere. And then Tusker is folding laundry. So, we have people making time to be here, rearranging their chores and their various things that they have to do. So we feel a little extra pressure tonight to be on our game.
We're never really on our game, so why should we do things differently now? Actually, we're on our game in the pre-show. It just all falls apart once we go on.
Yeah. Like I was saying.
So Devin here, I just want to make a point here. Devin says, I've culturally appropriated that Spanish. Not really, though. Not really, because, there are these Jews who fled the Inquisition. I'm descended from that, actually.
Oh, there you go.
So I come by it honestly, if very indirectly. Yeah, my grandmother had like the olive skin and the kinky hair and everything.
Devin has a question. Who are you wearing? I'm wearing, this is the Sam Walton collection.
Yes.
Yeah. It's part of the new Sam Walton.
It's vintage
collection. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to Sam Walton for supplying my wardrobe for the evening. It's a good thing you mentioned that, Devin, because I owed him a shout out. They wouldn't have given it to me if I didn't give them a shout out. They would have been upset. So thank you.
And this is a Dissident Left show. Let's thank the sweatshop workers in Cambodia who provided the labor to put that shirt on your back.
Yeah. Well, in China for the laptops and, the webcams. I think the microphone, I don't know where this microphone is made. Oh, yeah, this is made in China, too. It says right there. I keep this microphone upside down because this is a great mic.
Yeah.
The thing about this mic that's a pain in the ass, though, is that on the actual correct side of the mic to be showing the camera, it lights up. And I feel that would be very distracting for the audience to have to watch a row of lights blink and flash back and forth. So I use it upside down. But yeah, if we can figure out a pattern that'll subliminally program them to super chat, though. Yeah, right. Exactly. Tip jar is out, everybody. If you'd like to drop us some super chats, we'll go through the patron scroll later. We'll give our patrons our shout out before our first segment. We do have some headlines that we want to get to. Of course, it was a very depressing weekend for New York sports fans. The Giants got absolutely trounced last night, 38-7, and the Buffalo Bills. What should have been the feel-good, heartwarming story of the year. If Buffalo, after the horrific Hamlin injury and the storm there, if they rallied and brought home a Super Bowl, that would have been a really feel-good story. They lost earlier this afternoon. And so not a good day, not a good weekend for New York sports fans. But I suspect not many of you are New York sports fans, so you'll be okay. In fact, Holly, you're from Ohio, if I remember correctly. Your Cincinnati Bengals beat the Buffalo Bills earlier today. So congratulations to you, assuming you are from Ohio, which if I remember correctly, you are.
Was culturally very interesting to me when I lived in Chicago after college. I was working in an improv theater, of course. Why else would you be in Chicago as a theater grad? And when the Bulls played, the theaters were empty, which as a New Yorker was very strange to me.
Well,
because those are not. Yes, I was. Yeah,
the Jordan, the Pippen, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Scottie Pippen took a carriage ride when I was working there.
Oh wow.
I was driving a carriage. That was how I learned to do that. But it was very strange to me culturally because in New York, that would never happen because the people who go to theater are not the people who would not go to the theater because there's a Knicks game.
Right.
There's just not a lot of overlap.
Exactly. And there's so many people in New York. There's an audience for everything, no matter what. Not that Chicago's a small town, but some towns are just sports first, man. Sports over everything. There's a game.
The Bulls were playing, man. It was crickets.
Nothing.
Everything was empty.
Joe said it's true is here. Thank you for watching. Why is Kshama leaving the CC? We will get to it, my friend. Don't worry. We are on it. In fact, let's get into headlines, shall we?
Oh, hang on. My Scottie Pippen dirt. You know why I didn't take Scottie Pippen for a ride?
Why not?
All right. This tells you something about the stubborn, ornery, independent-mindedness of the kind of people who would drive a horse and carriage, especially in a town like Chicago where it's brutally cold like 8 to 9 months out of the year. Scottie Pippen, I shit you not, Scottie Pippen haggled. He haggled. So the way it works, it's a line, and the first, if you can turn it down though, and then it goes back to the next person. So the first person turned it down, next person turned it down, next person turned it down. It got to me. I was like, I don't give a shit, Scottie fucking Pippen. The last person on the line took Scottie Pippen at a $10 discount, and he didn't even tip well.
Yeah. Well, a lot of sometimes I guess maybe famous people feel like they're being shaken down because they're famous, so they feel they have to haggle in principle. But you really shouldn't do that. I took Greg Brady for a carriage ride, and I was shaking him down. And at the end, at the end, he called me out on it, but I had no shame. Well,
he was like, do I have to pay this? I said, yeah.
Hey, it's from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, right?
Damn right. If I have to listen to you for an hour torturing these poor fucking interns from your agency who rank so low that they got the assignment of listening to you talk about it, what great times you had with Marsha in 1975 all night, and I've got to be subjected to that along with them. Yeah, you're paying top dollar.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I just screwed up the screen share feature. There we go. All right. I was going to tell a haggling story of my own, but I think I'll push that to the end of the show since I just almost screwed this up.
I'm gonna get sued by Barry Williams now.
All right, everybody. We're going to do some quick headlines before we get to our first segment. These will not take long. This is a new tradition that we started, and we're trying to keep it going for as long as we can call it a tradition. So, the New York Post reports people should drink less coffee to combat climate change study.
What's that they said? What's that?
Yeah, Russell not doing his part now. Not doing his part at all. People should drink less coffee to combat climate change. Limiting your contribution to climate change requires an adapted diet, and coffee is no exception. Choosing a mode of coffee preparation that emits less GHGs, greenhouse gases, and moderating your consumption are part of the solution. Listen, folks, I got into this a little bit last week.
Well, further on in the article, though, they basically admit it's total bullshit.
Listen,
because as you go on, they say, well, it's true that actually, if you went over to the pods, you'd wind up using more water. So, it's nonsense.
Listen, that's not really the point. The point is, as I said last week, folks, no species lives forever. Okay, species come, species go. If humanity's time is up in a couple hundred years, our time is up in a couple hundred years. Okay? Stop with the ridiculous, we're going to give up coffee. You got private jets lined up at Davos as far as the eye can see. The schmuck here I'm going to switch to pods. I'm going to switch to paper straws instead of plastic straws. Come on. It's not in our hands in that way. If it were, we would have solved it already. There have been enough of these micro adjustments along the way, right? It's not in our hands, okay? Sometimes species die out. If we're too big a burden on the planet will get rid of us. That's not a tragedy. In fact, I would argue no species is less deserving of real estate on this planet than ours. And so, the hell with it. Not giving up coffee. I want the handles back on the bags, too. Doesn't have to be plastic bags, but they need to be stronger paper bags. I want handles on the bags. I don't want these paper bags you got to balance. You got fucking cans of beans spilling out on the lawn. No. I'm done with all this. So drink up, guilt-free. Headline number one. All right, headline.
And Big Macs have not tasted the same since they got rid of the non-biodegradable styrofoam containers.
That too. Yeah.
God damn it. Styrofoam that was the secret sauce.
Well, that's what catches the sauce and the cheese and the shit. That's what stops it from dripping on your lap while you're driving and trying to eat it. Now you got the wrappers, they're folded up
all over the place.
Exactly.
And we wonder why we have a rat problem.
Exactly. All right. Number two, Russell. Some of these headlines are like deja vu. They're the same every time for the last couple weeks. But more classified documents found in new search of Biden's home from Axios. Russell, you thought it was worth mentioning this time, even though we've mentioned it. So what's new about this?
I think it's worth mentioning because the hits just keep on coming. It's kind of amazing that like every few days it seems like they find more classified documents in Biden's home. I think it's worth mentioning, I don't pay enough close attention to the Pepperidge Farm guy with Alzheimer's Act that is the Biden presidency to say whether there's something to this. I don't have my ear close enough to establishment chatter right at this moment. I can usually read between the lines there. The right-wing folks are saying the deep state's trying to push him out, that they would not go after him like this if they weren't looking for an excuse to get him out of the running. Now, you were saying offline, no, he's running, but that's neither here nor there in regards to the argument they're making. They're not arguing he's not running. They're arguing that the powers that be are trying to get him out.
Get him out in favor of who? In favor of, another Democrat? Not in favor of Trump, not in favor of DeSantis. So in favor of who? What, they think another Democrat's going to be able to beat him in a primary because of these documents? You had we ran this experiment 6 years ago where you had a nominee under FBI investigation during the primary. They still fucking voted for.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that theory. I don't buy it.
I'm not saying I buy it. I'm saying I know most of our people do not hear the right-wing chatter, so I just thought it was worth mentioning. Because once in a while, those crazy bastards are right.
All right, fair enough. Well, this is some sad news. Our third of 4 headlines tonight. George Santos admits he dressed up as a woman for fun, but denied...
Is that him in the picture up top?
Denied being a drag queen.
He's doing better as a woman.
That's an ad that's getting some free advertising on our platform
I was gonna
here.
say.
Yeah, here it is. This is a picture of George Santos. He's on the right there at a festival in Brazil, dressing up as a woman. And I'm not disappointed in him that he dressed up as a woman. I obviously don't care about that. I'm disappointed that he's finally starting to tell the truth. I think this is very off-brand for him. I think this is a huge mistake. You ride the horse that you rode to the dance. That's not exactly how it goes. That's not the metaphor, but you ride the horse that brought you, right? Lying is his horse. Dishonesty is his horse. That's what got him all this way. He got all this way by being a shameless liar. Why change now? This is terrible. This is a real betrayal. In fact, I think he should resign for telling the truth. He wasn't elected to tell the truth. He was elected as a pathological liar. And I think, him turning to honesty is very, very disappointing. I think he should resign. I think he has disgraced himself.
That is such a trash take that they're going to take away your pundit card. You don't see what he's doing?
No.
He's coming out as trans so that they can't disqualify him for lying.
No,
he's going to get the whole trans activist community defending him the moment he comes out as trans.
Interesting theory.
I just saw a trans TikToker attack Greta Thunberg for making fun of or speculating on the size of Andrew Tate's privates, arguing it was transphobic to trans men who go on T and their clitoris becomes a small penis. So in some circuitous way decided it was hurtful to trans people to make fun of Andrew Tate's dick. So he comes out as trans, boom. He's good.
No more calls for resignation.
No more call. You can set up a story hour in DC. He'll become a beloved member of the community.
All right. Well, we did 3 funny ones, and it's always awkward to have to do a sharp tonal shift here, but obviously we do have to mention the shooting in Los Angeles at the Lunar New Year Festival. Russell wanted to mention this because it is obviously newsworthy. If you're going to do headlines, you got to talk about this a little bit. So, Russell, go ahead.
This took place in a heavily Asian community to the east of Los Angeles, where they were celebrating the Lunar New Year. They do actually have pictures of the suspect. He went in and did this shooting in a dance studio. It's hard to tell the age from the photos. He's between 30 and 50. It's not clear what the motive is, but this is a tragedy, obviously, for that community. What's really tragic, though, is as a nation, this one's not even, it's not, I'm not hearing a lot of talk about it.
No.
Know what I mean? Like, we've become so desensitized to mass shootings. And this is a rather large one. This isn't like 2 people got killed.
It's 10.
10 people were killed. Look, yes, if the shooter had not been Asian, it would be getting a lot more play. I will say that. It doesn't fit the white supremacist narrative, so they don't know what to do with a story like that. But the fact
Except tell it. And telling it is boring because this happens every day in this country.
That's what I was saying, yes. Because it's there is, in this country, there's no man bites dog element to 10 people getting killed for the crime of going to a dance studio during their holiday.
Right, exactly. All right, everybody. So we are going to start our first segment in just a moment. Before we do, we want to tell you all about our Patreon page. You can go to patreon.com/DueDissidence and support this show if you would like. We didn't
do our funnies, man.
Oh, that's right. Well, here, let's do it after I do this.
Humorless bastard.
I stepped on the funnies. Well, I think we're off to a funny start, so I jumped the gun on that. I'm sorry. But we have been doing a lot of streams this week. If you notice, it has been a very, very busy week. We had a screening of the Second Cooler documentary with a filmmaker talkback on Friday night. That was great. That was a lot of fun. We had a good crowd there, and a lot of people have watched it since then. So that was fun. We had our interview with Tara Reid on Wednesday, and then obviously we have a regularly scheduled show on Thursday. So we've been doing a lot of stuff lately, and the reason we are able to do that, the reason we were able to make time for that, is because of our Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers. So you can go to patreon.com/DueDissidence or DueDissidence.substack.com and sign up to support the show for as little as $5 a month. You get call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams and bonus video content every month. We're actually coming out with 2 bonus Patreon videos this week. So make sure you sign up if you would like to help support this project. Thank you very much to our patrons, the backbone of the show. All right, Russell, you're up.
Okay.
So this is something that Russell wants to start off. He wants to do a Sunday funny segment. So he wants to read a piece of satire every Sunday night. Do you have your stuff ready to go? There you go.
Yeah. Biden signs legislation to avert crisis of treating rail workers like humans. Washington. From the Onion. Praising the last-minute agreement to deny laborers any sort of civility or respect, President Joe Biden signed legislation Friday to avert a crisis in which rail workers might have been treated like actual human beings. Quote, "We were only a week away from a nationwide catastrophe in which we would have been forced to acknowledge the basic rights of these employees," said President Biden, applauding lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who ensured rail workers would continue to be denied a benefit as humane as paid sick days. Quote, "So much of what Americans rely on is delivered by train, from clean water to food to gas. And the last thing we want is for people responsible for transporting those goods to be able to stay home when they're seriously ill. Thanks to this law, we can guarantee that no engineer driving 20,000 tons of freight across this great nation will be able to access health care without having their pay docked." Biden went on to express confidence that next year, bipartisan legislation would be passed to ensure rail workers were no longer allowed to eat or sleep between shifts.
Well, there is hope for that. Indeed.
There is hope. As long as AOC is what passes for the left in the House.
Yeah, I'd say it's looking pretty good for that, actually.
It's looking pretty good. Yeah.
All right, everybody, let's start our first segment. Hit that like button, by the way. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well. Very, very important to like this stream. That helps the algorithm pump it out there and introduce it to new people. So everybody hit that like button, please. All right, we are going to start segment number 1 here. Doing well. We're starting our first segment before 7:30. That's actually pretty good. We ran a very tight ship with the headlines. That's good. I feel like the first couple of times you did headlines, they ran a little long, but, you do a segment over and over again, you perfect it,
Well, it's like when you go back and you look at our early YouTube videos, it really looks like a couple of homeless people who just who got a hold of an internet connection somehow.
Well, those were also early lockdown periods, so with the beard and the hair and all that.
That was I had these.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It was
moving on up.
Very professional.
All right. So as negotiations continue over whether to raise the nation's debt ceiling, Republicans are, of course, pushing for spending cuts. And Donald Trump, candidate for president in 2024, released this campaign video, which was really interesting because in this video, he warned his party against cutting entitlements like Social Security and Medicare. So let's hear from the man himself.
Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security to help pay for Joe Biden's reckless spending spree, which is more reckless than anybody's ever done or had in the history of our country.
It never occurs to Trump to do a second take, obviously. This was pre-recorded. It wasn't live. So what is he? He's 20 seconds in. He could have just said, all right, time out. I flubbed that. Let's take it back to one. No, he doesn't. It's better than we've ever. It's worse than we've had or been or whatever. He just keeps going. Fuck it.
I suspect it's like Rocky 2, where he's trying to get into doing commercials, and it just gets worse when they do it over. I think that's probably his experience.
Maybe he thinks he'll get nervous and he'll flub it even worse.
It'll just get worse from here. That's as clean a take as he's going to do.
Perhaps.
Biden has blown out the federal budget, wasted trillions on left-wing lunacy and the ridiculous Green New Deal, which is a tremendous problem and embarrassment to us. And thrown open our treasury and our
doesn't exist
to
in any form yet, but it's a tremendous problem.
In fact, migrants that are coming from prisons and migrants that are coming from mental institutions are being dropped into the United States, and we do nothing about it.
That wasn't covered in the Second Cooler documentary. Yeah. That's one thing. We have the filmmaker on the line. Maybe she'll call in. Maybe, I don't know, Mrs. Ellen Jimerson, maybe you should have included that, that they're being let out of mental institutions, and put right into.
Well, you know what I noticed, and I don't know for sure because I haven't looked at the numbers on the video itself, but sometimes because we're kind of like anti-woke economic left, we do get right wingers who mistake us for right wingers. And I did notice we lost a few subscribers after we aired that. I think you had a few who were like, hang on, they don't hate migrants.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
I thought these were my people. I thought I found my people.
Exactly. Here, in fact, let's do this. Let's interrupt this segment. We'll edit this out for the YouTube, but we have the filmmaker from the Second Cooler here on the line now, Ellen Jimerson. Ellen, why did you not include the very, very important detail that migrants are being let out of insane asylums and dropped on our side of the border?
All I can say is I'm an operative, I just don't go there.
See, this is why we need Trump back, because, Trump knows how to deal with people like you. Nothing gets past.
It's all one big scheme, man. They just want to put more people on medication.
Yeah, that's
big pharma. Gets to
Exactly.
medicate these people from the asylums. It's just it's the new triangle trade.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lunatics, murderers, rapists.
Yeah.
Unmedicated.
Some we assume are good people.
I assume some who go off their meds are still good people.
See, who says that Baptists can't do sarcasm? Who says Christians can't do sarcasm?
All day long.
All day long. All right, Ellen, I'm going to mute you and remove you. Feel free to chime back in. Thank you for tuning in and providing some clarification on that.
Certainly.
All righty. All right, here we go.
At the safest border in the history of our country just 2 years ago, and now we have probably the worst border in the history of the world. I don't think any country has ever had anything like we have right now. Well, we absolutely need to stop Biden's out-of-control spending. The pain should be borne by Washington bureaucrats, not by hardworking American families and American seniors. The seniors are being absolutely destroyed in the last 2 years. Cut the hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars going to corrupt foreign countries. Cut the mass releases of illegal aliens that are depleting our social safety net and destroying our country. Cut the left-wing gender programs from our military. Cut the billions being spent on climate extremism. Cut waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere that we can find it, and there's plenty of it. But do not cut the benefits our seniors worked for and paid for their entire lives. Save Social Security. Don't destroy it. The Democrats are looking to destroy Social Security. We're not going to let them do it. Thank you very much.
All right. So there you have it, sort of trying to revive some of that populist economic messaging from his 2016 primary campaign. And speaking of primary campaign, I do want to read a few clips from a recent article in Rolling Stone, because Trump is not only warning House Republicans against making these cuts, but he's also preparing to differentiate himself from likely rival Ron DeSantis on this issue as well. And what I mean by that is that he's trying to paint DeSantis as one of these like Randian, libertarian, Reaganomic Tea Party people, as opposed to the economic populism of Trump. So I'll just read these very, very brief snippets here. This is from a recent article in Rolling Stone magazine. In a Republican primary, only Donald Trump could effectively go after Ron DeSantis for wanting to cut Social Security, a Republican close to the 2024 Trump campaign tells Rolling Stone. Trump has a track record of saying the right things on this issue, both when it comes to a general election and also Republican voters in a primary. DeSantis' record in the House on this topic is very much of the Paul Ryan privatized Social Security platform, which is just not where our voters are. For Trump, DeSantis may be easy to paint as a heartless budget slasher. During his stint in the House from 2013 to 2018, DeSantis was a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, the hardest of the hardline members of the GOP conference. He was part of the team, Freedom Caucus founder and former Arizona Rep. Matt Salmon tells Rolling Stone. Salmon further praises him as one of the most principled people I got a chance to work with. We got one more slide here. The draconian cuts DeSantis voted for would have raised the eligibility age for Social Security and Medicare to 70. It would have weakened Medicare by offering seniors premium support instead of comprehensive health coverage, and it would have eroded Social Security by giving recipients miserly annual adjustments for inflation. Taken together, the two measures would have cut these bedrock safety net programs for seniors by more than $250 billion over a decade. So Trump apparently picking a fight not only with the incumbent Republican House members, but also with his potential 2024 rival. Russell, what do you make of this?
Yeah, a point that article made, as much as we talked about this a little bit offline, I haven't read a Rolling Stone article that wasn't about a geriatric rock star since Taibbi left. And you can really see why that split was inevitable, because, they're shit libs. Who reads Rolling Stone? It's a bunch of boomers who were once radicals, who are a bunch of shit libs like Jan Wenner, right?
Right.
So there was really no place for a guy like Matt Taibbi there. Matt Taibbi was in the tradition of counterculture, Hunter Thompson, political reporting that Rolling Stone made its name on. But reading that article, it described Debbie Wasserman Schultz as far left. So that tells you all you need to know about where Rolling Stone's political coverage has gone since Taibbi departed. This is the first time I've seen it. That aside, the article did make an interesting point, because we talk about Trump as somebody who ran to the left and then chucked all that out the window when he got into office. Actually, in a sense, he didn't. He didn't do that Republican thing about trying to pressure Democrats to come to some kind of grand bargain on cutting entitlements. He just did it all. He cut taxes for the rich like a Republican, but he never did talk about going after Social Security and Medicaid. So,
Medicare. Medicaid, different story, which I'll bring up in a second.
Medicare, rather.
Yeah.
So that's an angle I actually hadn't considered. Like, yes, Trump wasn't proactively doing anything in regards to the more left policies he espoused, but he did realize politically Republicans in the end do not benefit from going after Social Security and Medicare. So he really left that alone. So he does actually have some credibility in that regard. I am of the opinion, I have been this entire time, I've said it's not that Trump doesn't have any fight left in him, doesn't have an angle to work against DeSantis. It is that Donald Trump will mysteriously have a heart attack after drinking his non-environmentally friendly morning coffee before the intelligence services will allow that man back in the White House. I don't care what he runs on. They are not going to let that guy be president again, period. Ron DeSantis, I think he has enough skill. I mean, on the, getting away from the grassy knoll angle on the Trump run. I think DeSantis has enough skill to realize he needs to pivot on those issues. And I think he will. Whether he does in reality, I don't know. But in terms of his political rhetoric, I'm pretty sure he's going to disown those policies if he actually announces he's going to run.
We shall see. I mean, the thing about Trump, the president versus Trump, the campaigner, is that it wasn't that yes, you're right. He didn't proactively seek to just shred those two programs. But the problem with Trump is that he's a lazy bastard. He's lazy. He wasn't up for the job. He didn't like doing the job. And I think this is going to hamstring him this time around, even when it comes to making these points. Because, yes, I mean, he talks this way right now, right? He's talking about campaigning to DeSantis's left on some of these issues. And look, he is to DeSantis's left on some of these issues, just like he was to Paul Ryan's left during his first 2 years, right? I mean, there's no denying that. However, a really telling point in Trump's term was that 2017 Graham Cassidy bill, which was the Obamacare repeal bill that John McCain famously voted down with the thumbs down. That bill would have transferred Medicaid over to states and capped Medicaid funding such that it would have destroyed Obamacare for a lot of the working poor who benefit from those Medicaid expansions. And so he campaigns in 2016 saying to Ted Cruz, very famously, we can't just let people die on the street. We have to take care of them. If that bill passed, if John McCain didn't give the thumbs down, if he voted yes, people would have literally died on the streets because of that bill.
Right.
And that's not because he wanted them to necessarily. It's just because he's a lazy bastard who didn't want to do the work of telling Congress, no, make this bill better and get it back to my desk. I'm not signing it like this. Had he done that, not only would he have credibility this time around on issues like this, but that bill probably would have passed if he did that, because McCain's main objection to that bill was not necessarily the content of the bill, but the way it was rushed through Congress. He said there was not enough time to vet this, to give each side, to have each side make their points. He objected to the process. So if Trump had extended the process,
that's what he
they would
said.
have passed it.
That's what he said. He was dying. Fear of the eternal flames can do a lot.
I mean, it may have been a crisis of morality, but McCain had very few of those throughout his life.
A crisis
obviously.
of fear of eternal damnation, not morality. It's like, hey, on the off chance that this eternal flame stuff is true, I got to give this a thumbs down.
Well, whatever his motivation was, I think Trump would have had a lot more credibility to make these kinds of arguments had he actually used his weight to try and make whatever Obamacare replacement bill better, but he didn't. He was extremely lazy about it. I remember him going on TV. The Republicans, we passed a beautiful bill. Let's get it done. He didn't know what was in the bill. He didn't care. He's just a lazy bastard. Right. And so that's why, you really can't even take him seriously on things like that, I don't think. That's why I think it's going to be very hard to sell that kind of populist message as a contrast to whoever his chief rival is.
And as I said, I think DeSantis is skillful enough to get out of it, even so. Like, all that may be true, and it is true in regards to DeSantis's record. He's no dummy. He's going to pivot on economics to where he needs to be.
All righty. Well, let's get to, our second. Tusker. Thank you, Tusker. Pony up if you can, folks. Thank you, Tusker, for setting a good example. Thank you for the $5. We appreciate that very, very much, of course. Let's go into our second segment, shall we?
You should all be ashamed of yourselves. Tusker told us offline she just lost her job at the Tasty Freeze. She's still giving us money. The rest of you, where's our filthy lucre?
Yeah. I was expecting a sound drop there. I guess you didn't get to it on time. That's all right.
Well, Nee. I was shocked that Nee still has student loan debts.
Egro 489 still has student loan debts. Yeah. Well, so do many of us.
Don't worry. Joe Biden's going to clear those right up for you.
Yeah, it's in court. They're working on it.
The wheels are in motion. He's getting to it.
The wheels are in motion, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to
Tusker. Apparently, is hooking now.
Oh, okay. All right.
And a safe alternative. I hear that now they use the OnlyFans. The kids are making a fortune. Show just a little underwear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. OnlyFans. I wonder if we can live stream to OnlyFans through StreamYard. That'd be fun. Just do a live stream. Just have.
I keep saying we need to do a nipple tassel show.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Show our moves.
Exactly. All right, let's get to Kshama Sawant. That's our second segment of the night. We actually covered this briefly in our headline segment last week. Or last week. Yeah, that would be Thursday. Yeah. But we said we wanted to cover this more thoroughly this evening, and so we will. Seattle City Councilwoman and Socialist Alternative member Kshama Sawant announced this week that she will not be seeking re-election to the city council. Instead, she's founding a new labor organization called Workers Strike Back. In a guest article for The Stranger, a Seattle-based newspaper, she articulated the need for an independent workers' movement. I'm going to read a brief section of that right now. We're not going to read the whole thing, obviously, but she says, "We cannot put our faith in the AOCs or the Pramila Jayapals, even though I understand there were many who had high expectations for them. AOC recently claimed that she could not fight against Democratic leaders on behalf of workers because it would cause relational harm." That was the video that we covered. And I knew that relational and reputational harm was going to be bad for her. Yes. What about the vast and very real harm taking place in the absence of such a fight for our needs? Meanwhile, the organization that should be holding AOC and the squad accountable, the DSA, appears to be unwilling to do so. It gives me no pleasure to say this because I am currently a member of DSA, but the DSA leadership has, for the most part, provided cover for the misleadership of the squad. There is a vacuum of real left leadership, locally and nationally. We need a new party for the working people, one that holds elected officials accountable, that bases itself on social movements, that organizes alongside workers on the streets and in workplaces. And I think all of that is exactly right. I want to share one more exhibit here from workersstrikeback.org. There are 5 demands as a movement here. 1, workers need a real raise. 2, good union jobs for all. 3, fight racism, sexism, and all forms of oppression. Quality affordable housing and free health care for all. No more sellouts. We need a new party. So I'm certainly on board with all of that. We're gonna go to a second part of this segment in a moment. But she calls out AOC and the squad in that article and mentions that, look, Socialist Alternative has picked some fights with the DSA. And there's a lot of crossover between them. It's not one or the other. Kshama is a member of both. And I think, look, she's exactly right. Somebody has to lead a charge here. And I understand people have mixed reactions to this because it sucks certainly for the people of Seattle to lose someone like that who has delivered many, many wins for that city. She won $15 an hour in Seattle in 2013. That was before the Sanders campaign, when that became thought of as a national fight.
Right.
Like $15 an hour was not even a pipe dream at that point. I mean, when Sanders introduced it in 2015, that's when everybody said this is a pipe dream, this is unrealistic. It wasn't even that at that point. It was nothing. And she won it pretty fast after winning that seat. And, all sorts of things from the Amazon tax to renters' rights. She is a great fighter and a great champion for her people in Seattle. And so it's going to suck for them to lose her. But at the same time, she has enough star power, and she probably feels a need to take this more national, because as effective as she's been on the Seattle City Council, she's on the Seattle City Council. And if there was a broader movement of socialist organizers who really had the kind of fighting spirit that she had, she wouldn't feel a need to do this. She would have felt herself as one of many who are, carrying this torch. But as she says in this article, there aren't many. There aren't many. You look around, and even organizations like DSA have been co-opted to a large extent. And so that's why she's doing this. I don't blame her. Go ahead.
I think she's right. And I think what we really need is, we're going to be getting into the Cop City thing in Atlanta. What really strikes me about, for example, the George Floyd movement and many other actions, the CHOP zone, they're very leaderless. They're very directionless. Where there are leaders, very often they're poor leaders, or they're just scamming people, as turned out to be the case with the Black Lives Matter national leadership
there.
There is all of this energy that is being put to no good purpose. And we do have a lack of credible voices and movement leaders that can really unite this fractious left. There is a willingness, and she identifies that in her article. There's more of a willingness of people to really put themselves on the line and fight the establishment and fight the system that you haven't seen since the Vietnam era. However, unlike in that era, it's scattered all over the place. There's really no focus. There's really no direction. The left didn't just start having the problem of internecine fighting. That's always characterized the left. But I think it's being exacerbated by the lack of a unifying agenda and focus to all of this energy. Everybody knows that the country is a shit show, but nobody seems to have a clear policy goal for fixing it. And she is articulating a clear policy goal. But I don't have to tell you, because it's a lot of what this show is about. And actually, this is not really new. We're just facing a new version of this. The identitarian left and the economic left being at odds with each other, that's an old story. It's just playing out in a more exaggerated form in some respects. In a way, actually, it's kind of inverted, because if you look at the fights that went on between those wings in the 60s, the economic leftists were a lot further than they are now. Whereas today it's the opposite. The identitarians are much more radical than the identitarians were then. The identitarians then were just about desegregation and whether that should be really the focus. Civil rights should be the focus. Whereas the economic left back then, they were straight up Marxist Leninists, right? Today we're more, perhaps Miss Sawant accepted, we're more just European style socialism, right? I mean, most of us are just kind of fighting for that. But hey, Sawant will run into that. Like, it is a problem. Like, if we do try to unite this fractious left, how are you going to do it? I saw that at Grand Central. We talked about that. You had the older organizers wanted to keep it on economics, wanted to keep it on class. As soon as they got a younger teachers union rep, it went to identity and they shut it down right away.
Well, that's where some of the political party ambitions of this movement are a little bit less encouraging than the just straight up militant labor moves that they're talking about making, which we're going to get into in a second because friend of the show, Ryan Grimm, chimed in on this. We're going to get to that in a second, but our Patreon caller, Ellen, turned her mic on. So do you want to chime in on this for a minute?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in terms of a tactic, what y'all think about her including the language of we have to stop racism, sexism, and all forms of oppression, because we get back to that identitarian bit, which tends, over the long haul, it seems to me, to overwhelm everything else you've already said. A, B, you've got this sort of loosey-goosey language. What does that mean? What do we mean, fight racism and sexism? Whereas in her other points, it was very concrete.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point, and that relates to what we're going to get into next, because I think that is aimed more at the political party component, because you have to build coalitions to form a party, and a lot of the identity politics is good for bringing certain people into your movement. Now, those people can end up sabotaging it in the long run, which is the danger, right? And I'm not suggesting that she's doing it for cynical purposes. I don't believe she is. I mean, she held BLM vigils in City Hall when it was closed during the lockdowns. Yeah. So I think she very deeply cares about these issues. I'm not saying that she's being shallow or she's being opportunistic, but I do share your concern that once you open that door, you don't know what kind of elements are going to flood in. And how they're going to cause divisions in the ranks, which is why a lot of class organizing and labor organizing makes a point to sort of not necessarily shun that kind of stuff, but not to center it, as Russell was talking about when he filmed the railroad worker rally in Midtown Manhattan.
And you know what? I mean, that would be my answer. It's not that as leftists, we do care about things like we just aired your documentary that was all about the plight of migrants. It's not that we don't care about these things. We are deeply suspicious of what we believe is a corporatized identity politics that is simply used to divide the working class, and the language of it and the tactics of it are so divisive that it, on the one hand, gets a lot of support from clickbait-seeking corporate media because they thrive on conflict, social media companies that elevate those conflicts, and deeply troubled narcissists for whom that language of attack, of hatred, of division deeply appeals. And even people who are simply looking for a way to channel their idealism, if they weren't disturbed narcissists before they got involved in those movements, they're going to be by the time they come out the other side. So her saying we want to struggle against racism and sexism, these are classic left struggles. It's not the struggle, it's the approach, it's the tactic, it's the way that postmodernism has infected those movements. That is the objection.
And that piece in the railroad workers strike that you just mentioned, Russell, was exactly where my mind went when I saw that. It's like you've got this working class focus, and then all of a sudden, the young woman reared on, or man, or anybody,
It was like
older people who have drunk the Kool-Aid. Just it gets inserted. So,
But what I
anyway.
will say about this, though, even though, like I said, I share a lot of those concerns, Kshama has a proven track record of winning. Shama's a winner. She's a fighter. She doesn't lose. She won the minimum wage. She won renters' rights. She won the Amazon tax. She beat back a recall against her with our help.
Right.
Like I said,
Yeah.
if I have any sort of criticism for her, it's with nothing but love and a desire
Right.
to help. I love Kshama Sawant. I've never done a fundraiser for anybody. I've never been to a political fundraiser. Even Bernie, I never went to a fundraiser. I gave money online. But I actually helped host an online fundraiser for her to beat that recall, and she did. So she wins. She knows how to fight. She's tough. Now, again, from the political party standpoint, what works in Seattle will not necessarily work everywhere, which is where I have certain reservations about that component of it. In terms of her willingness and skill when it comes to just fighting for higher wages, nobody does it better than her. Nobody does it better than her, which means she's the perfect person to lead that kind of movement. And I think it's very, very exciting on that score. All right, Ellen, we're going to put some more exhibits on the screen, so I'll mute you, and feel free to chime back in if you like.
And since we're about to talk about friend of the show, Ryan Grimm, one of the things that's really disappointing about Ryan's take on a lot of things is some of his articles are very useful. He wrote better than anybody. He did 2 articles about how these identitarians are tearing apart these not-for-profits,
right,
with their constant hectoring demands and constant perception of microaggressions, and just making it impossible for these organizations that are like trying to help homeless people function.
Right.
He wrote 2 great articles about that, but he seems to really lately be setting himself against the left.
Well, it's certainly against any left that
The
strays
actual
too
left.
far from the Democratic Party, for sure.
The actual left.
Tusker says you should interview Catherine Liu. Do you know that name, Russell? Then it rings a bell, but I don't recall.
Rings a bell, but wasn't she in the Charlie's Angels reboot?
Yeah, right.
Oh no, that's Lucy Liu. That's
Lucy
Liu.
Yeah, indeed, Lucy Liu. But thank you, Tusker, for the donation. I will look that up because her name does ring a bell. Another one here before we go into our next segment. It's really going to be, I'm going to clip this separately for YouTube. So Kshama got tear gassed at a BLM rally, then opened up City Hall for the protesters. Yep, indeed. That's what we said. We did a fundraiser. We guested at a fundraiser for her, and Russ and I actually interviewed her campaign manager during that recall. So we're definitely pro Kshama here. Anyway, Ryan Grimm, if you remember, appeared with Kshama Sawant on an episode of the Bad Faith podcast, which did not go well for him. He got browbeaten pretty badly and pretty deservedly when he tried making excuses for the squad's vote to break up a rail strike. Kshama handed him his ass there pretty hard. And when Kshama Sawant announced that she was not going to seek a term on Seattle's city council, she was going to resign at the end of her term, he noticed her plans to form this workersstrikeback.org, which included not only a list of labor demands, but also a demand for a new political party, a new workers' party. And so he tweeted the following, which he since deleted because he caught a pretty severe ratio for this. But he reminded people the People's Party launched in 2017, urging people to stop giving small dollar donations to progressive Democrats and instead give them to the People's Party and its affiliated podcasters. It's now 2023, and they never ran a single candidate. Now a new third party is stepping in with the link to Kshama's piece there. Now, what's cowardly about that tweet, and he did, to his credit, delete this, okay? What's cowardly about that is that whatever you feel about MPP, Kshama is already an elected official, right? She brings a certain legitimacy. A certain legitimacy to this, just right off the bat. Right off the bat. But the other thing that's really upsetting about this is that he seems to suggest that new party efforts are grifts. And he goes on in this Twitter thread, which he did not delete, this is still up here, to make some other points here. Kshama announces she won't run for re-election and will instead work to organize a workers' movement and political party, ? Launch a new show called On Strike. She's going to do a YouTube show called On Strike, where she and some hosts will interview some, labor people. Her launch column in The Stranger says that she's making this call because the Squad and other progressives and democratic socialists are sellouts, DSA is too soft, and independent journalists on the left are the worst. That's a similar section here.
This is where you can really see that he's got his mind right, because he lost his sense of irony. Yeah, that's the first sign. It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Right. Yeah.
Once they stop laughing at jokes, they become pod people.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Once you stop realizing that you're outing yourself by saying something like that, you're one of them.
One of them. Background is that her party, Socialist Alternative, was engaged in a protracted sectarian struggle inside DSA that they did not win. This goes on to, lament the fact that DSA and their endorsed candidates and their endorsed members of the House did not force the vote. Socialist Alternative obviously thought that they should have. This is where he says here, Socialist Alternative is proudly Trotskyist. That's not red baiting. That's what they call themselves. All right, so here's my answer to Ryan Grimm, because he is right. This last tweet that he mentions links to, after Trotsky, as with all Trotskyists, we trace our roots back to Trotsky himself. There's no doubt that Socialist Alternative is, by all American standards, certainly a radical organization. And Kshama herself is a radical. And for that reason, it might be the case, as I mentioned a few moments back, that she's not the ideal person to lead a national new party, because a lot of those attitudes, a lot of those thoughts of hers, like repurposing mansions for public housing, her thought that nothing beautiful should be privately owned, right? A lot of those more radical thoughts of hers might become a liability if a party that she leads grows to a certain point. I'll grant you that. That's why I said I'm more excited about the labor organizing than I am about the new party component of this.
Right.
However, Ryan, if you are so concerned that Kshama and Socialist Alternative are too radical to catch on, that's all the more reason not to provide cover for progressive Democrats. If you actually believe that the only way to achieve progressive change is by progressive Democrats joining the House and pushing through these things, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, yada, 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 then you have to be tougher on them when they just sit on their hands and refuse to do anything, because somebody has to do something, right? So if you're going to nitpick Kshama Sawant, if you're going to nitpick Socialist Alternative, then that's all the more reason to hold AOC's feet to the fire when she fucks up, because according to Ryan, she's the only play we got. If she fails, we're all screwed. If she doesn't deliver, then we're all screwed. So I don't even understand. I don't understand the logic of what he's saying here.
If AOC pushes harder, and if the Squad pushes harder, they're going to incur great reputational and relational harm. And if they do that, then 58 years from now, we're not going to get Medicare for all. So it's the long game, Keaton. It's the long game. Ryan gets it. AOC gets it. Jayapal gets it. For some reason, you don't get it. I don't understand. You're a smart guy. It's not easy getting those pizzas to all the right places.
It's the right places at the right time.
Time, Exactly. But somehow you don't understand how insider baseball works in Washington, man. I keep trying to help you with this, but I don't know what you're going to do when I'm in India, brother.
Well, I'm going to have to get some co-hosts in here.
Yeah. Well, you better get Ryan or something.
Yeah, right. Maybe I'll have Ryan Grimm
get
co-host the
Ryan.
show, and he'll explain to
He's
me
a friend.
and the audience.
He's a friend of the show.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But seriously, like, what do you think? Like, what is his angle here? What is his angle? Like, if not this, what?
I think. Look, I got a lot of shit for this when we broke down the Kshama Ryan thing, and I said, well, he's got Washington brain now. I don't think he started out that way. Honestly, I don't know the trajectory of Ryan Grimm's career well enough to say that one way or the other. I know that he's written some good articles, as I mentioned. He's the only person that I know of who really deep dived into how this faction is destroying these not-for-profit organizations. That was really great work he did there. But yeah, with this, he's part of that whole he's part of that whole fall of the squad itself, where you had all these people who were kind of in the Bernie wing, kind of in this progressive wing, and now they've all become insiders. They talk like insiders. They think like insiders. They want to talk to you in terms of 3D chess. And just like the establishment, it's a chess game that doesn't actually go anywhere or benefit anybody. The benefits are always just over the horizon. They keep you caught up in the horse race and the strategy of it. And in the end, you don't get anything. And most of the public has gotten wise to that. And if Ryan hasn't noticed, it's the reason we're on the verge of becoming essentially a right-wing authoritarian country, because people like you and before you, people like David Brinkley and John McLaughlin and all these other pundits and talking heads talked this shit to people for decades about how everything going on in Washington was really smart and subtle, and it was, the great game. Oh my God, what's his name? Chris Matthews was all about that. Oh, right. The rough and tumble of politics here in Washington. I love it. What did that do for anybody? Absolutely nothing. And now people see that. So when you sit down and you talk this way about what for left people was like their last hope, you're talking about it just like on the McLaughlin group, just like they used to talk about all the little court intrigue. When you're talking about it that way, now you've empowered the right wing. You're helping to empower the right wing because people like us who were the rank and file supporting these candidates, we're out. We're not giving them any more money. We're not supporting them. We're not on our show asking them to come on or their people to come on. We're not promoting their campaigns.
No, we're on our show instead telling people actually to go to workerstrikeback.org, put your email in there, see what they're all about. They're doing launch events throughout the country on March 4th. One of them will be in New York City. Russell will be in India. I will be at that event in New York, and we will have more info on that as that date draws nearer. Hopefully we'll have somebody on to talk about that. But they are organizing in several different cities. And so, yeah, go to the website, check it out. Anyway, sorry, Russell, go ahead.
They've just become just like the old establishment, a little younger, a little browner, a little hipper, a little better dressed. But right. They're the same. It's the same tactics, same logic, same arguments. They've just been completely co-opted. It's just the establishment for the next generation.
All right, Cool Blue, thank you for the $4.99. Catherine Liu talks about the professional managerial class. So she's a writer of some kind? The name rings a bell. I'm sure I'll recognize her when I Google her after the show. But yeah, a professor and a published author. All right, well, thank you, Cool Blue, and thank you for the donation. I think we got one more down here, right? There we go. Oh, Devin, putting your money where your big fucking mouth is. Yeah.
Wait, would you get a dinner theater gig?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're gonna be doing Death of a Salesman over lobster claws in Florida.
Yeah, where are you based, actually, Devin? Are you?
I mean, he's seen my production, so I think he's in New York.
He has seen your production.
Left. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, great, excellent. All righty, so shall we get to our third and final segment of the evening?
Let's rock it.
All right. This is something that it's really kind of interesting that this hasn't really come to our attention until now. Obviously, the shooting made this national news, but you'd think we'd have heard of this Cop City development sooner. I had never heard of this until just 2 days ago. But over the past year, plans have been made to build a sprawling police training facility in the Walini Forest in Atlanta, Georgia. Since Atlanta's mayor approved the plan, activists have been protesting at the site itself in the forest and around the city. And so for some background on Cop City and the activist response, here's a brief video that's been making the rounds on Twitter. So let's take a look here.
Atlanta is planning on building a $90 million training ground in the forest to practice urban warfare tactics. Activists are calling it Cop City and say it will harm Black people in the environment.
The facility would be a space where the police could practice tear gas explosions, bomb testing, have a shooting range, practice high-speed chases. Like, they're literally going to build a mock city of Atlanta to practice different urban warfare tactics. The purpose of this project is to be able to better surveil, better suppress, and better prevent liberation movements that directly address the exploitation that Black and working class communities are feeling.
Atlanta actually increased its police budget after Black Lives Matter protests and a movement to defund the police. More than 70% of Atlantans disapprove of Cop City. In 2021, Atlanta's population was almost 50% Black. 20% of Atlantans live in poverty.
The Atlanta police have always been antagonistic towards poor and working class people. They have been active agents of gentrification.
Cop City is proposed to be built on land that included a slave plantation and a prison farm. The construction would cut down part of the South River Forest, which helps prevent flooding and protects against extreme heat. Activists against Cop City are occupying the forest, building barricades, and protesting against corporate sponsors to stop construction.
Defund the police, abolish them, and invest in the things that actually keep us safe. We've been ramping up our efforts to get folks in the community trained on things like restorative justice, on medic trainings, on de-escalation tactics, disaster relief, all the things that we know actually keep us safe when we're in crisis. And so we don't need to call the police. Folks won't feel like they need to engage 911, that will have those skills in our community and can meet our own needs.
All right, so there's a video that you see. Now, this week, one protester, Manuel Tehran, known by friends as Tortuguita, I hope I'm saying that right, that was the sort of name that he went by, was killed in a police shooting. Now, the details of that are unclear. The police claim that he shot at them. Activists dispute that account, and authorities have confirmed that there is no body cam footage of the incident, which means, unfortunately, looks like we're never going to know exactly what went down. But protests over his death turned violent last night as activists torched police cars and vandalized the Atlanta Police Foundation building. Now, the Atlanta Police Foundation is paying for $60 million of the $90 million bill needed to build this mock city where they're going to run these sort of urban warfare experiments and firefighter drills and things like that. Taxpayers are going to foot the bill for the remaining $30 million. Now, here's a graphic breakdown of where the Atlanta Police Foundation gets its money, and this is why people say, this is why a lot of socialists say that the police exist primarily to protect capital, to protect property, because the Atlanta Police Foundation, funded by all of these corporations here, Amazon, Chick-fil-A, Delta Airlines, UPS, Home Depot, Inspire Brands, Georgia State University, going to come back to that one, the Atlanta Hawks, and State Farm Arena. I think that says Arena. Sorry, the font's a little small on my end. Accent Enterprises, Waffle House. Oh, that must break Russell's heart. Russell's a fan of the Waffle House. JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. They are chipping in to the APF, paying for $60 million of these $90
banker
million.
to Epstein and infamous infamously fraudulent bank fined for
Wells Fargo.
opening fake accounts for its customers.
Yep. Funding the police here, funding this project. A lot of these companies, I mean, not Home Depot, they're a pretty overtly right-wing company. So is Chick-fil-A, obviously. But you know, Amazon, JP Morgan, certainly Georgia State University, progressive college that it is. You know, they're all about the Black Lives Matter, right? All about the diversity.
Yeah.
They have all the lawn, that whole lawn sign ethos here. Love is love. Science is real. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Here's something from littlesis.org, which also produced that graphic. So I want to give them a shout out. I will link to that when I put this video up later. Georgia State University touts itself as a university for all. And in 2021, president of GSU, Mark Becker, said Derek Chauvin's conviction was a demonstration of our judicial system serving justice. This statement came after 150 faculty members sent an open letter to Becker asking the university to meet the moment after the murder of George Floyd. You get the picture here. The letter presented a handful of diversity, inclusion, and equitable requests, including providing professional development opportunities, supporting the advancement of Black staff and faculty. I'll skip down to this last paragraph here. GSU adjunct lecturer Dr. Deepak Raghavan serves on the Atlanta Police Foundation Executive Committee. He is also a past chair of the Georgia State Foundation Board of Trustees, and currently serves on the boards of Preparatory School, Woodward Academy, and Zoo Atlanta. So here, you know, obviously a very woke, progressive institution on the donor list here to the APF, in charge of building a mock city in a city where the poverty rate is 20%, a city with obviously a big homeless problem. And instead of building housing, they're going to build they're going to spend $90 million on a fake city for cops to practice urban warfare.
This is, look, you couldn't find a better example of what we've been talking about. Look at how all these corporations are all in on canceling and language policing, and they're all in on that police training facility. Yep. These corporations don't give a shit about racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. They could give a flying fuck. What they do want is for us to all be at each other's throats about those issues, so that while you're trying to cancel some convenience store worker,
right,
they're building this facility to keep you down when finally your economic deprivation gets bad enough that you come for them.
And to keep the riffraff out of their neighborhoods with their banks and their stores and their college campuses, right? Yep. This is why. Yep. This is why socialists say all the time, police protect property. Yes, they are the guardians of, you know, keeping the neighborhood nice and clean and respectable. So it's a place for business. Place for business. That's what they care about. They care about their business. They don't care about anything beyond that. The idea that a corporation exists for any other purpose but to make money is nonsense. That's what you learn at business school. You learn about corporate social responsibility. What is the ethos of this company? A company has no ethos. A corporation has no ethos. A corporation has an incentive. The incentive is profit. They act in pursuit of profit, period. Anybody who believes anything else is a sucker. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. This proves that.
Well, and this is where Elon Musk, among many other things, keeps going after the ESG standards, you know, the social responsibility ratings of companies that are kept by Goldman Sachs, certainly a wonderful arbiter of which companies are moral. Shell has an ESG rating, right? I mean, these companies, it winds up just functioning as a cover for what these corporations really do. I mean, if oil companies can get it, what's its function? Its function clearly is not to rate its
Right.
contribution to society. Its function is to give it a pass for what it's actually doing. That's what that label is. And then Musk will speak out against it. And look, I mean, we're not stands here, but the establishment attacks him for the wrong reasons. The issues that the establishment has with him are actually his redeeming qualities.
Right. Exactly. And when it comes to this shooting, obviously the fact that there is no body cam footage, I mean, it's the cops' word against the protesters' word. It doesn't even seem like there were any protesters who saw what happened. They just mentioned that they heard a barrage of gunfire. It didn't sound like an exchange. It didn't sound like Manuel shot first and then they shot back. It sounded like a bunch of shots happened at once. Now, it could have been that he drew his gun. He fired a shot just as they shot back. One of the officers did have a wound. They did confirm that. But without the body cam footage, it's never going to be clear what happened. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get any real answers about that. But that shooting is what sparked this massive wave of protests last night. There have been protests about this for the last year. And notice, this is one more angle that I think is just fascinating about this and proves once again how hollow all of the corporate and corporate media-backed Black Lives Matter narratives were during the George Floyd shooting. This has to do with not necessarily defunding the police, although the activist in that video certainly said that she was for that. But this is a question of allocation of resources. You have a 20% poverty rate in this city. You have a homelessness crisis in this city. Do we want to invest $90 million in a fake city for police drills, or do we want to invest that money in putting housing up and getting roofs over people's heads?
You can spend that money building a real city.
Exactly. And notice, this got almost no media coverage at all for the last year until this shooting happened.
Right.
This should, if they actually cared about the animating ideas behind the George Floyd protests and the George Floyd movement, they'd have been on this story a year ago. We wouldn't be hearing about this for the first time now. These plans got pushed through a year ago. People have been protesting this for the last year. Nowhere. New Yorker wrote a piece about it. Rolling Stone, to their credit, wrote something about it. Aside from that, you really didn't hear about this at all for the last year until this shooting happened. And there were, protests in the street that turned, obviously, into pretty much riots last night.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, the post-George Floyd defund the police movements have revealed the underlying agenda of this move to militarize the police in all of these cities. This is, you want to talk about an area of agreement between the populist right and the populist left. We've all been saying for decades that they're militarizing the police to use them later against the people.
Right.
And now we're here. Why have they been giving all these police forces tanks and military surplus? For what? You have small towns in the Midwest getting this equipment. Who's it to be used on? The Medellin cartel is gonna show up in Pella, Iowa.
Right.
What is that for? That is to put down popular unrest. It's to put down mass uprisings. Whenever the anniversary of Stonewall comes around, something that often occurs to me is the Stonewall riots. For those of you unfamiliar, it's usually considered the birth of the gay rights movement here in New York at the Stonewall Tavern. Gay bars were illegal. The police raided, as they often did. And for the first time, they fought back until by the end, the police were barricaded in the bar. And there were 2,000 gays, lesbian, non-binary people outside throwing rocks and bottles. That story is impossible today because they would kill them. There is no way they would allow that to occur. And you know what? Back then, they did call for backup. The police car drove up, a couple of cops in there, 2,000 people with rocks and bottles. They drove away. Today, they wouldn't be showing up with two guys in a police car.
Exactly.
They'd be showing up with the military surplus tanks
Right.
that they got from the federal government. There would be no Stonewall riot today.
Right.
And this is why they want to continue on this trajectory of building more training facilities. Who's it to protect against? You.
Exactly.
They're
right.
training to fight you.
Right. Exactly. Steve Breedlove, thank you for the question, Steve. What is the source? How do you know a cop was actually shot? Well, like I said, the cop did produce himself with a wound. Now, there are people who think that may have been a friendly fire incident or perhaps something worse. Like I said, we don't know for sure.
What I read said the bullet was proven to come from his gun.
From the protester's gun?
Yeah.
From the gun that they had on the scene?
Tortuguita
Yeah.
is little turtle.
Yes. It's very, very difficult. It's really an unfortunate thing that, without a body cam footage, you're never going to know exactly how that went down. And that's the sad thing about this, is that it doesn't sound like you're ever going to know. Billy D gave us a donation, $20. Thank you, Billy. We appreciate that very much.
I love Dueslando.
All these donations, all the Patreon signups help us stay on the air and keep doing these shows and producing more content. We're going to be back on the air on Thursday. I think this is all we got for this evening, is it not?
All right, hang on. I'm gonna tell one of my great stories. Cops plant guns all the time. All right, so I've been arrested a lot, and I think this was the last time. Yeah, it was probably the last time I got arrested. And it really shows you how, in general, white people don't really have this experience. Anytime I get arrested, I'm usually the only white dude in the cell. So this is part of why I think, in general, not always, not everybody, but a lot of white people don't get what people of color are talking about in regards to how the justice system works. And it's not even something that they hide if you go on the inside. So the last time I got arrested, I'm in there and the cop says to everybody, okay, so in New York, the way it works in New York, you get processed at the precinct and then you go to central booking. Every borough has a central booking. In Manhattan, it's called the Tombs unofficially. So you go to the Tombs and you go progressively you start in a big cell and then smaller and smaller cells on your way to the judge. You go through like 3 or 4 cells and finally you'll go see the judge. So in the first cell I was in, people had hidden cigarettes when they emptied their pockets. So they were smoking. So when we were being moved to the next cell, the cop says, I know you were smoking in that cell. But if you smoke in the next cell, you're going to be in here for 2 weeks. And I know you're thinking, that's illegal. They can't do that. You know how the cops lie? We can do that too. Your file can very easily fall behind a cabinet.
Yeah, you told me this one before. Off air, I think.
So, yeah. This is now when I was in there and hearing that, I was like, this is something that most people will never hear. This is something most people will never see. Cops openly telling prisoners, yeah, the cops lie. Yeah, we do that. We do. If we don't like you, we're just going to violate your constitutional rights. This is why a lot of people who are not experienced in the justice system are very naive about how the country runs. They're very naive about what really goes on in those systems. But once you see it, it makes a lot of things that perhaps might not be comprehensible to you very clear. The rage, why would people want to defund the police? Go to jail a few times, man. You'll find out why people who are regularly subjected to that kind of treatment want to defund the police.
Tusker, you're in the chat. Tusker, are you in the studio, rather? Tusker is another one of our Patreon supporters who has call-in access to this show. Thank you for taking advantage of that. Tusker, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. How are you guys?
Perfect. Good. Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Well, I guess because I didn't want to have you edit it out later So I was just going to ask more about the Kshama Sawant stuff.
No, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I haven't really kept up with it much, but has she stated like how it is that she's going to like build this movement?
Well, I mean, they're forming, I guess, offshoots in cities around the country. I think Philadelphia is one. I think Durham, North Carolina is one that they're having a launch. And obviously New York, Seattle, obviously that's where she's at. I think one in Los Angeles. They're building an email list now, and they're going to, I guess, do it the way organizers tend to do it. They're going to get in touch with people, see who wants to get involved, in what capacity they want to get involved, and then they will just start setting up shop. I mean, the one of the encouraging things about this is that they are starting at a moment when there already is a labor movement of sorts,
Right.
to a greater extent than there has been in probably, I don't know, 30 years. 40 years. And so that's encouraging. And she has said that she's not intending to replace any existing labor movement. She's looking for this worker strike back to join it. I think it's an exciting thing because, like I said, she does have a record of success, which is very, very rare on the left. The left is full of loudmouths like Russell and I who, talk a good game, but what do we win? We don't win anything. She walks the
I don't
walk
know
and
about
she's a
you.
very
I'm getting
effective
tired of
fighter.
winning, Keaton.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, just like snarky online comments is
Right,
the
exactly. I mean, that's all we know how to do.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that I was kind of disappointed with the whole, like, what was, I think, like the third part on her platform being, more of the identity politics thing, because I think that there's just a more artful way to sort of address those things
I agree.
without like having it part of your platform. And then I would have to say one of the other things that's disappointing about it is, now obviously I know Medicare for All would help everyone in the country, but there's a big complaint from more rural areas about like big agriculture and stuff like that. I really wish she would have put something on there about at least some kind of farmers' rights or something like that. I think would have added a lot to it and could actually draw in, like maybe a different group of people than what the left kind of usually thinks of, at least in America.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
That is a good point.
And I think there should be more rural outreach on the part of the left also. So,
Yeah,
I think that's very fair.
We have all those, I mean, you'll see it consistently anytime anyone goes around to like interview anyone that's kind of like pro-Trump. They'll sit there and they'll talk about like Bill Gates buying up land,
Of course.
all that stuff. And I mean, that is a huge problem. I mean, these are small producers that are competing with monopolies. And so
Right.
maybe just more of an antitrust or anti-monopoly thing would be good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that she talks about in that article, and it's something that she's spoken about a lot in interviews, is she really laments the fact that the right wing has captured the sort of language of class
Yes.
consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think that probably informed her decision to put the bit in there about the identity politics, just to be clear that, like, no, we're actually not interested in partnering with people who are anti-LGBT or anti-women's rights, right? Or, things like that. That would be my guess. I agree with you that is not the savviest of things to do. But I believe that's probably where she's coming from. And I think, once again, when it comes to a political party and the limitations of that, I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that Kshama won and was able to really win big things in a very progressive city. It is very, very difficult to replicate that, not just nationally, I mean, obviously nationally, but even in a city like New York, which is not a progressive town in the way that Seattle is.
No, it is not.
It's a Democrat town, but it's a money town, and so, because of that, I feel like a lot of the things you're talking about do come with greater risk in cities around the country that are not Portland, that are not Seattle, that are not Austin, Texas. Even Austin, Texas is not the Austin, Texas of 15 years ago, right? There are very few places where you can replicate that exact strategy. And so that's why I mentioned that when we were doing this segment, because I think you're absolutely right about that. But when it comes to the labor organizing points and higher wages and housing rights and things like that, she's as good as it gets in those battles.
Yeah,
I would parse that line even further. It's not even the racism, sexism part. It's the all forms of oppression part that you're starting to dog whistle into the postmodern.
Well, yeah, right, exactly, right.
Racism, sexism. I mean, that's a classic kind of left appeal.
All forms of oppression means
what does that
mean?
The
wrong way,
right?
If I'm non-binary and you do a double take, because you don't really know how to categorize me, then that makes you an oppressive agent. Yeah. It's all vague.
I posted this the other day. If you ever saw Life of Brian, Monty Python not only is dealing with the insanity of organized religion, it's dealing a lot with internecine fighting on the left and some of the foibles that the left is prone to. And there's a scene there that's eerily modern, given when it was made, where one of them in the People's Front of Judea, who hate the Judean People's Front, he says he wants to be a woman, and they have this whole exchange. Well, all right. Well, why do you want to be a woman? He says, well, because I want to have babies. You want to have babies, but you can't have babies. Don't you oppress me. I'm not oppressing you. Where's the fetus going to gestate in a box? And so one of them finally resolves this saying, okay, we will fight for your right to have babies. John Cleese says, well, what's the point if he can't have babies? Well, because it's so he won't be oppressed. And, that scene it feels like we're there now, because there is a certain strain of left thought where the final oppressor is reality, right? There's a certain direction you can go in where eventually the battle is with reality, right? Reality is oppressing you. Reality is not allowing you to be what you want to be, but that's not anyone's fault, right? You can't. And now we're in a moment where, under the influence or with the tool of postmodernism, for the first time, I think like that movie. Really, it is ahead of its time. It kind of predicts the current moment where you're going to dismantle the idea that words mean anything in order to attack this problem of reality, right? You're going to argue that there is no reality, that it's all socially constructed, that it's all linguistically constructed. And so you're literally going to go to war with reality. What Monty Python made a joke about, 50 years ago, we're there. That is literally a project with a certain portion of the left to basically argue that reality does not exist, that it is whatever you say it is.
I think one of the reasons why I kind of specifically sort of disdain sort of like the sectarianism that will kind of occur with more idealist leftists is this separation into such small groups,
right,
that you actually can't come together and get anything done, and
that's how they want it
to be, exactly. Yeah, and that's the entire point, and that's kind of the reason why I had mentioned the Congress for Cultural Freedom to you guys a little while ago. It specifically was like a CIA operation to advance the postmodernist left view. Because they realized that it was toxic. And yeah, sure. I mean, it's not like they had to go find someone and sign them up to the CIA. There are enough of these idiots out there that they could just promote them, invite them to all the conferences.
Of course.
Do all that stuff. It's just natural. They just make those people the primary speakers of the left, and then everyone gets confused about what it is, which is actually about understanding that you have differences, but recognizing your class interests and fighting from a class interest, not an identitarian interest. And that's
Right.
really what a
Right.
lot of postmodernism is.
Look, if these ideas constituted any legitimate threat to power, they would not be embraced by Amazon, by Starbucks, by Citibank. If it were a threat, they wouldn't be putting the flags on their logos, right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite of a threat. They love having a left that's obsessed with how many identities fit on the head of a pin.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right. Yep. Okay, good. Thanks, guys. You have a good night. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you,
You
Tusker.
too.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tusker.
Billy D with another $20 donation. Thank you again, Billy. This, I'm assuming you're talking about Cop City. Sounds eerily akin to to a domestic version of the School of the Americas, ironically located in Fort Benning, Georgia. That was an Army school, right? About developing like forces in South America or Central America, something like that.
Right. Yeah. We would bring up South Americans.
Yeah.
Right, and train them there.
Yeah. And that was actually run by the U.S. Army. So yes, good point, and thank you for the donation very much. And by the way, everybody, if you're new here, we have a pretty good crowd in here. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and please like the stream. Very important. All right, very important that you do that. Red Z, thank you for the $2, Red Z. They suck, but you gotta comply. Figure out later. I'm assuming you're talking about the police there. Yeah, figure out later. In terms of like, yeah, yes sir, no sir, of course. I wish that worked more often. You know, there are times when even that doesn't work, and there are times, and this is, you know, look, this is sorry, that was an accident. Not that your comment was bad, Bill, but you were talking to somebody else. But Jesse Ventura was talking about when he went into Minneapolis because he lives in Minnesota. He was visiting an African-American friend of his, and the guy, when he gets in his car, he put his driver's license on the dashboard and his registration on the dashboard. And Jesse asked him, what are you doing that for? He says, because if a cop pulls me over, I want everything to be out there. I do not want to have to reach in my pocket. I do not want to have to reach for the glove box. I want to be able to tell him, there's my stuff right there, and keep my hands where I can see him. White people would never think to do that. You know?
All right. So I'm going to,
you know,
I've talked to people about this a lot. I'm not saying it's the same. Okay. It's not the same. But if you're poor and white, we don't have the talk in the way that black people have.
Right.
But I was raised like, hey, don't do any sudden movements with the cops. Don't talk back to them on not out of like, you know, a respect for authority, but you might get shot. Like that was a thing in my neighborhood too. Like the cops, we all knew that if you wised off to them, they would take you out. There was a field where they would take you out and they'd beat you in places that didn't bruise. So this is not an experience that only people of color have. They have it worse and more frequently.
Yes.
In proportion to their numbers.
Disproportionately. Yeah, exactly.
Greatly disproportionately. Like, yeah, if you're white and poor, you're less likely to be shot by them.
To have that, yeah.
But it's not like being rich and white, where there's no way on God's green earth that's ever going to happen to you.
No, but the other side of this is if you are, I wouldn't know because I didn't grow up rich, but I grew up in a middle class family, like the average. And we lived in a suburb, it's mostly white suburb. And our neighbor would get pulled over. Older black guy. He would get pulled over driving home. The cops would say, what are you doing here? Wasn't speeding, didn't have a taillight out, nothing. You know, that's one more situation where he was middle class and black, and he got pulled over, and they would never pull over a white person in our neighborhood for no reason.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not saying it's the same. I think that we've lost sight of the fact, though, that look, I posted something the other day saying that we say that the voices that are being heard are more diverse. And what I would argue is you've simply diversified the elite class. You're hearing from more diverse voices that graduated from the right schools.
Right.
You're not really hearing from the people. Now, that's always been true of white people as well. Like, these white people who are speaking, they don't represent white people. They represent a very elite class of white people that get platforms like that. So, you know, somebody like David Brinkley, for example, that's as relatable to the average white person as a Martian. Right? Like that. It's completely another world. And I think that's true as well of people who have these platforms who are from other communities now. You know, they went to Harvard, they went to Yale. They're not, you know, they're not really relatable, I think, in the same way that for most white people, the political class, the political pundits, they're not relatable. They're not speaking to the experience that most people are having.
Sure thing. All right, everybody. Before we sign off, patreon.com/DueDissidence. Also, go to DueDissidence.substack.com. I'm going to put that link in the chat right here. You can sign up at Substack for $5 a month or $50 annually to help support the show. Even if you can't sign up as a paid subscriber, signing up as a free subscriber helps you stay in touch with us. We drop Substack posts every day that we're going to do a live stream. We will send a Substack email out to tell you about the live stream. So it's a great way to learn about our streams in advance so you don't miss them. Obviously, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you can, sign up at either Patreon or Substack. We have a couple of different Patreon bonus videos coming out this week. One is on a bill in Pennsylvania that eliminates the 4-year college degree requirement for 90% of government jobs. And then we also have an Oxford Union debate segment that we're going to be commenting on. That should be fun. So those are going to be out exclusively for patrons and paid Substack subscribers this week. We got our scroll there is concluding, and we got one more super chat to end the evening from our friend Zach. Ritter managed an anti-war news conference, public Q&A, and the second person used her voice to berate Scott for saying young lady to 7-year-olds. They were, okay, well, there you go. There you go. Giving Scott Ritter, one of the great anti-war voices of our time, shit for addressing a 7-year-old girl as young lady. Well, yeah, that says it all right there. Thanks for mentioning that. Is that on YouTube somewhere? Is that because we would like to actually play that? We would actually like to cover.
Yeah, that's right up our alley.
It's right up our alley. If there's a link for that, Zach, you are one of our. You're on Patreon, I think. Are you on Substack or Patreon? I'm pretty sure you're on Patreon. If you are, you could send us the link as a Patreon message. We would love to cover that on Thursday.
And Steve here wants to know how
and
you
thank
get
you for
call-in
$4.99,
access.
of course. Sorry, go ahead, Russell.
Steve here wants to know how you get call-in access. Become a patron, yo.
Become a patron. Patreon.com/DueDissidence. That's how you get to call into the show. We are a pay-to-play operation here. So
right.
The people
we're
who
running
donate,
our own little OnlyFans.
Our own OnlyFans. This is like the Hillary Clinton State Department. You want to talk to us? You got to pony up, right? Otherwise,
we're running this out of a pizzeria,
right? Otherwise, you could chat. Oh, Zach says he'll get it and send on Patreon. Beautiful. All right. Well, we got to. There we go. One of our segments for Thursday is already chosen. We got it. That'll be fun.
There you go.
Thank you, Zach. And yes. You get bonus videos and call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams if you sign up at either Patreon or Substack. All right, everybody, that is our show. We want to thank our patron callers for calling in. Thank you guys all for watching very much. This was a fun one. Thank you once again, as always, for a lively chat. And we will see you back here Thursday night at 8 p.m. Until then, be safe. Be well. Thanks again.
Courage.
Thank you.
You never give me the in, so I wasn't expecting it.
I followed. See, unlike you only got to tell me once, and I remember it. I remember to, throw to you. So, there you go.
So from now on, I'll throw it in.
All right. Go ahead, Russell. One more time for everybody.
Courage.
Thanks, everybody.
Please clap.